Listen, don't even ask about the hair, okay? It's the best I could do. I want you to close your eyes and think of the word princess. You're probably picturing the typical Disney fairy tale princess, all decked in her beautiful ball gown and glittering tiara, living in her ivory tower, happily ever after with her handsome prince. Most people wouldn't necessarily think fierce, strong, capable, competitive, athletic. But there is a real-life princess who embodies all of these traits and then some. The magnificent Princess Anne, dubbed the hardest working royal alive, averaging about 528 royal engagements per year, and having just turned 73 only a couple of days ago, the Princess Royal is showing no signs of slowing down. So, in honor of Her Royal Highness's birthday, let's talk about the coolest princess alive. When I think of Princess Anne, I think of loyalty, integrity, respect, commitment, discipline, resilience, hard work. Basically the exact opposite of what some other royals, like Meghan Markle, represent. The princess, very much like her mother, is the very embodiment of what it means to be royal, dedicating one's life to the service of their country, with a hefty dose of some serious badassery, if that's even a word, when it comes to the Princess Royal. Apart from being an Olympian and the hardest working royal alive, did you know that the princess was once nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize? I didn't until I did my research. Yeah, in 1990, when she was 39 years old, Princess Anne was nominated by President Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia for her work with the charity Save the Children. And funnily enough, in her usual straightforward and disarmingly honest manner, especially in, today's contrived fake society, she once openly admitted that as much as she wants to help children, she doesn't necessarily ever want to work with them.
Was working with children something that you had wanted to do?
No. And I don't regard children in that light at all. It was more the idea of what you could do for them, not actually working with them.
Like I said, I had no idea about this Nobel Peace Prize nomination. And it's entirely because, like Princess Catherine, Princess Anne isn't one to boast or gloat about her many accomplishments. She just lets her accomplishments speak for themselves, rather than shouting from the rooftops every time a $25 donation is made, a la Markle style. Aside from the fact that her very essence exudes strength, there are several examples, far too many to include in this video, of the princess's seemingly limitless physical and mental fortitude and her immense bravery in the face of mortal danger. For starters, she was an accomplished Olympian equestrian, and she set a record when she became the first royal ever to compete at the Olympics. It takes serious commitment, dedication, hard work, and discipline to be a competitor at all, let alone on the Olympic stage. Now, some of you might say, oh, well, she was a princess, she probably got special treatment, but there really is no evidence of that. She had a pretty rocky road, actually, one that was littered with injuries and illnesses, but that's where her tenacity and her fighting spirit really shone through. Because in those difficult moments, she never gave up. And the most famous example of this winning, fighting attitude of hers took place in the Montreal Olympics of 1976 when she was 26 years old. During an event, Princess Anne had a major fall, one that was bad enough to give her a concussion. But true to form, she got right back up and completed the course. Even though, again, she knew that she wasn't going to win, but that's just who she is. She's not a quitter. And I admire that endlessly. And her tenacity and fighting spirit isn't just limited to sport. They translated to her everyday life, including when that life was so dangerously threatened.
Shots have been fired at Princess Anne and Captain Phillips. They escaped, but 4 people were hit, 1 seriously. Good evening. There's been an assassination attempt on Princess Anne and Captain Mark Phillips, but they escaped unhurt. Gunmen opened fire on their car 200 yards from Buckingham Palace. Their private detective, their chauffeur, and a policeman on point duty were wounded in the shooting. So was a man who was walking past.
A passerby by the name of Ronnie Russell subdued the shooter, Ian Ball, by punching him. So there was definitely a hero in the story, in addition to, of course, the 4 men who were protecting the princess and Captain Mark Phillips. I'm sure you've all heard of this one, but when the shooter ordered Princess Anne to get out of the car, she famously replied, "Not bloody likely." When I was writing this script, I initially hesitated on using the word feminist or feminism at all, because it's just had such a bad rap in the past few years, past few decades, I would say, and I just wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. But upon reflection, it occurred to me that Princess Anne is actually the ultimate feminist, and a true feminist at that. Feminism in its purest form. A capable, independent, and strong woman who speaks her mind and who isn't afraid to be herself. Even if that doesn't necessarily align with society's stereotypical notions of what a woman is or what it is to be feminine. And I don't know if the princess has ever used that word to describe herself personally, but it's kind of besides the point, really, because she doesn't really have to say it. It just comes across effortlessly from her actions. Compare and contrast that to some other less than savory individuals who love to scream that they're feminists every chance they get, when they ironically are some of the most misogynistic women I have ever had the misfortune of hearing of. That's what I like about Princess Anne, her authenticity. Especially in her younger years, she fully embraced being a beautiful, feminine, made up, hair done, a lot better than this sorry attempt because she had help and I don't, who at the same time was tough and, had this take no prisoners attitude and was naturally a more dominant and assertive character. It wasn't put on. It wasn't fake. It wasn't forced. And most importantly, she didn't have to step all over men and disparage them and humiliate them in public just to make herself feel more valuable. To her, she is valuable. Full stop. And this all really came through in an old clip from an engagement interview that she had with her then fiance, Captain Mark Phillips. And she was just naturally the more confident one, the more assertive one, the more dominant one, as I said, whereas her fiance, who was a captain in the army, was the more shy, reserved, retiring, giggling personality.
You seem on the surface to be a very shy person. It's not every day one proposes to a princess. Did it require a lot of courage to propose?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think the fact that the girl in question is a princess makes any difference at all.
I think you've got to be brave to propose to anybody, isn't it?
Yes.
But I rather hope that, every time he spoke to me or took me out, that he didn't actually think of me as a princess.
Now, some people might be thinking, oh yeah, well, Meghan Markle is just the more dominant one and Prince Harry is the more retiring one. Why do you have a problem there? Well, you're literally comparing chalk and cheese. Because on the one hand, you have a very natural couple. And more importantly, you don't see Princess Anne at the time clenching her jaw and huffing and puffing and scowling every time her fiancé had something to say. which is exactly what Meghan Markle was doing throughout that engagement interview. I mean, it's shocking when you think about it. With a camera trained on her, she still behaved that way. So what on earth does she do when there's no camera? Meghan's dominance is a side effect of her malignant personality and her desire to make herself feel more important. Nothing more, nothing less. Princess Anne's dominant personality is a direct result of her strength and her noble and very self-assured, confident character. She's a very stable personality. When you consider Princess Anne from her early 20s to now, she pretty much comes across as the same individual, of course with some maturing, and everyone changes throughout the course of life, but the baseline is exactly the same. And these qualities of, stability and nobility and self-assuredness and natural confidence are things that Meghan Markle and the likes of her entirely lack. That's why they are so destructive, because their self-worth isn't inherent. And if anything, Princess Anne is the embodiment of inherent self-worth, self-respect, and dignity. So all in all, Princess Anne is pretty darn incredible. And this has just been a snapshot. There's just too much to pack into the one video. And if you ask me, she is definitely the role model that young women such as myself and young girls should be aware of and look up to, because she personifies such noble qualities that I think are almost a dying breed in today's day of, self-indulgence and just me, and taking offense at everything. I might be young, but I don't identify with any of those traits and trends of just living for yourself. I look up to Princess Anne because she lived her life in service of her country, and she still does. At 73, she is still going strong, and as I said at the beginning, she's showing no signs of slowing down. And for someone who was the spare, she turned out to be quite a remarkable human being. Honestly, with all due respect to King Charles, of course, but Queen Anne would have been quite an incredible thing to behold. Yeah, I definitely want to be Princess Anne when I grow up, because I'm not grown up already. See ya. Have a good weekend.